It is so much worse than what the media is telling any of us.
Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for the support. On my channel, I like to give my opinion and perspective on things that are happening today, things that I think actually matter to everyday people, especially those of us trying to raise kids in the insanity known as today's society. I do like to talk about current events and politics, so please like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and share it with others. Also, be sure you are subscribed. Help me to grow this channel and hopefully reach more people that value logic, reason, and sanity. Also, be sure to find me on Rumble under Outspoken Samantha in the event that YouTube decides I have violated their community standards and chooses to kick me off their platform forever. That being said, let's get into today's topic. So we're gonna get just right into this today. So as you heard on February 3rd, 2023, so just 10 days ago at this point, a freight train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed close to the town of East Palestine, Ohio, and residents within 1 mile of that area were ordered to evacuate from their home. And the more information that has come out, the more astonishing it has been that there is almost no coverage of this issue. The most information that I have found has been off of TikTok and from people that live close to the area.
If you have not evacuated, please leave the area.
Massive train derailed Friday, 20 of them carrying hazardous materials as flames lit up the sky in northeastern Ohio.
The evacuation order is in place for anyone within a mile radius of the crash site.
These aren't storm clouds.
This article is from WFMZ News and it's dated February 4th, so the day after this incident. About 50 cars derailed in East Palestine at about 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time Friday as a train was carrying a variety of products from Madison, Illinois to Conway, Pennsylvania. Rail operator Norfolk Southern said Saturday. There was no immediate information about what caused the derailment. No injuries or damage to structures were reported. The post-derailment fire spanned about the length of the derailed train cars. Michael Graham, a member of the National Transportation Safety Board, told reporters Saturday evening. The fire has since reduced in intensity but remains active, and the two main tracks are still blocked. Norfolk Southern said 20 of the more than 100 cars were classified as carrying hazardous materials defined as cargo that could pose any kind of danger, including flammables, combustibles, or environmental risks. Graham said 14 cars carrying vinyl chloride were involved in the derailment and have been exposed to fire, and at least one is intermittently releasing the contents of the car through a pressure release device as designed. Mayor Trent Conaway, who earlier declared a state of emergency citing the train derailment with hazardous materials, said air quality monitors throughout a 1 mile zone ordered evacuations had shown no dangerous readings. Village officials warned residents that they might hear explosions due to the fire. They said drinking water was safe despite discoloration due to the volume being pumped to fight the blaze. Some runoff had been detected in streams, but rail officials were working to stem that and prevent it from going downstream, officials said. The day after this big explosion happens and all of this stuff is spilled all over the ground, they're already advising people that there are no dangerous readings in the air quality and that the water is safe despite being discolored. Following the evacuation of the area, the accident was assessed and trying to determine the level of hazardous materials still being released and how to handle the remaining materials that were still coming from the damaged cars. The local experts and people that, are experts in the field of handling hazardous materials have been slowly releasing the contents from the cars that are already damaged and conducting controlled burns in the area to disperse of it. I found this video that has been shared, originated on TikTok, and I think this guy probably gives the most thorough explanation of the chemicals that we are dealing with here and why it's important to understand what it is that people are being exposed to, because then we can determine if the instruction that they are being given about the air quality and the water being saved and whether or not it is safe to return to their homes is actually in their best interest.
Of the cars that crashed, 5 of them contained vinyl chloride. It's a monomer used to make PVC. The reporting on this has gotten vinyl chloride confused with polyvinyl chloride, the polymer made out of vinyl chloride. Now, the reason that this distinction is really important is vinyl chloride is very hazardous and very flammable. Polyvinyl chloride is a plastics that's used in like everything. The other thing about vinyl chloride is that it boils at 8 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's shipped in its liquid form. Meaning that when these trains crashed and these started leaking, they weren't just leaking liquid, but they were spewing boiling gas. So vinyl chloride is really toxic. OSHA has the permissible limit of how much you can be exposed to it during an 8-hour shift as a 1 ppm part per million, average over 8 hours. So prior to this, the biggest spill of this chemical was in New Jersey, where one train car and about 23,000 gallons of vinyl chloride were spilled, but it didn't catch on fire. Now, this crash in Ohio has 5 train cars. These kinds of tanker cars can carry between 25 and 33,000 gallons. Let's call it 250 to 250,000 pounds of vinyl chloride. That's per train car, 5 train cars. There's maybe 1 million pounds of this toxic chemical spilling into the ground and also boiling off into the air. But then it caught on fire. I think this is where the reporting is really bad, because no one is mentioning what the byproduct of vinyl chloride burning is. Of the many byproducts of burning vinyl chloride, one of them is hydrogen chloride. Hydrogen chloride is really unstable and latches onto water, like just water vapor in the atmosphere, and that turns into hydrochloric acid. So right now, government officials from the railroad, both the governor of Pennsylvania and Ohio, are calling burning off the 1 million pounds of this stuff a success, but not mentioning that it means that we have hundreds of thousands of pounds of acid in the air, potentially. Now, ever since engineering school, I've studied a lot of industrial accidents. I just find it really fascinating, and organizations like the Chemical Safety Board, NTSB, and OSHA all have really good reports available to the public. I think as a designer, it's really good to learn about mistakes. When looking at these kinds of industrial disasters across time, there are a couple things that are pretty universal across all of them. One, the responsible party, in this case, Norfolk Southern Railway, always plays down the reality of the situation. Politicians also just repeat the same lines, and then news outlets just repeat the same. So all we're hearing is the responsible party's word.
Again, I can't help but reiterate how incredibly astounding it is that this is just not being covered. TikTok has been the main source of information from local residents and people like this guy who are much smarter than most reporters anyway, but they're sharing their analysis of what the real dangers are, but we are not hearing anything on a national level, and this is a big deal. And as people have been slowly returning to the area, we are now hearing more and more reports of dead animals being found.
Officials are claiming that the air and water are safe. Residents say they can still smell chlorine. They've complained about their eyes watering when they go outside, and one woman says the noxious air killed her chickens.
Out of nowhere, he just started coughing really hard and just shut down and went very fast.
So I walked up to the cage, and this is what I found.
Amanda Brashears was going to feed her 5 hens and rooster this morning when she discovered them all lifeless, practically in the same position, with no signs of a predator entering their enclosure.
I'm beyond upset and quite panicked because they may be just chickens, but they're family.
Brashears says her chickens were alive and well yesterday. She believes the smell following the detonation of the train carrying chemicals that derailed in East Palestine is to blame for her birds' sudden death.
My video camera footage shows my chickens were perfectly fine before they started this burn. And as soon as they started the burn, my chickens slowed down and they died. If it can do this to chickens in one night, imagine what it's going to do to us in 20 years.
And since the initial reporting of the accident, remember, the next day they were telling people that the air was fine, that they weren't detecting anything dangerous, and that the water was fine, even though it's just a little murky. Just ignore that. There are several more chemicals that were released into the environment from these train cars. This is from an article in a publication called The Intelligencer. A letter the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency delivered to the Norfolk Southern Railway Company Friday listed several chemicals that were released into the environment during the company's February 3rd East Palestine train derailment that have not been discussed publicly before. The letter posted on the U.S. EPA website is called a General Notice of Potential Liability, and its purpose is to notify the company that it may be responsible under federal Superfund law for cleanup of the site or the costs the EPA has incurred in cleaning up the site. The letter lists vinyl chloride, the chemical officials have mentioned extensively during press conferences, as a hazardous material that was released, but it adds these materials to the list: ethyl hexyl acrylate, ethylene glycol, monobutyl ether, and butyl acrylate, and says the four either are known to have been and continue to be released to the air, surface soils, and surface waters. The last of the four has been mentioned in some news reports, but the two others do not seem to have been mentioned. The letter also states air and water sampling showed that materials released during the incident were observed and detected in samples from Sulphur Run, Leslie Run, Bull Creek, North Fork, Little Beaver Creek, and the Ohio River. Such materials also were observed entering storm drains, it states. And there were rail cars and tankers derailed, breached, and or on fire that included, but were not limited to, the following materials: vinyl chloride, ethylene glycol monobutyl ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, isobutylene, and butyl acrylate. 5 railcar tankers of vinyl chloride were intentionally breached, and the vinyl chloride was diverted to an excavated trench and then burned off, the letter states. It says areas of contaminated soil and free liquids were observed and potentially covered and or filled during reconstruction of the rail line, including portions of the trench/burn pit that was used for the open burn off of vinyl chloride. When the Public Information Office of the U.S. EPA was asked whether the additional list of materials in the letter should be of concern to people living in the area, spokesperson Rachel Bassler said the EPA is not aware of any air hazards associated with the site, but continue to conduct air monitoring. EPA was aware of the chemicals in the list and has been actively monitoring for these chemicals and a range of other chemicals as well throughout the response. Not only had this initial chemical, vinyl chloride, that was confirmed and detected and is now being burned off into the air, they are now coming out with several other chemicals that people need to be worried about, yet their response has still been, it's fine. It's fine. We're not detecting anything dangerous. Well, I'm not here to freak anybody out. I don't want to cause any unnecessary stress or fear. I am not an expert. I have as much information as anybody else. I have access to the same information that everybody else does, but I do think that it's worth noting on the National Cancer Institute, where it mentions vinyl chloride, it says, what is vinyl chloride? Vinyl chloride is a colorless gas that burns easily. It does not occur naturally and must be produced industrially for its commercial uses. Vinyl chloride is used primarily to make polyvinyl chloride, PVC, a hard plastic resin used to make a variety of plastic products, including pipes, wire, and cable coatings, and packaging materials. PVC is not a known or suspected carcinogen. Vinyl chloride is also produced as a combustion product in tobacco smoke. It says, how are people exposed to vinyl chloride? Workers at facilities where vinyl chloride is produced or used may be exposed primarily through inhalation. The general population may be exposed by inhaling contaminated air or tobacco smoke. In the environment, the highest levels of vinyl chloride are found in the air around factories that produce vinyl products. If a water supply is contaminated, vinyl chloride can enter household air when the water is used for showering, cooking, or laundry. Which cancers are associated with exposure to vinyl chloride? Vinyl chloride exposure is associated with an increased risk of a rare form of liver cancer, as well as primary liver cancer, brain and lung cancers, lymphoma, and leukemia. So the most likely way that you're going to be exposed to vinyl chloride is if it gets into the water supply and you use that water for things like showering and the steam gets into the air, or if it is burned and those fumes get into the air. And I did look it up. It does say that total incineration of vinyl chloride is the most effective way to get rid of it, but the temperatures do have to be sufficient enough not to turn it into something called phosgene. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. And why would that be such a concern? Well, according to the CDC website, phosgene was used extensively during World War I as a choking agent. Among the chemicals used in the war, phosgene was responsible for the large majority of deaths. We really have no idea at this point how far-reaching the effects are, but I think it's safe to say that they are much more severe than what we're being led to believe. There have been concerns about the water from the Ohio River reaching as far as West Virginia. So in West Virginia, they have tapped into a secondary water source from the Guyandotte River while increasing water treatments of the water that they have access to, just to be safe. Because of the massive area that the Ohio River covers, it does have the potential to affect millions of people because because it is a primary water supply for numerous communities and cities. Come across TikTok videos of people living in the area that are extremely frustrated by the response, the lack of urgency that seems to be surrounding this issue. There's been no coverage, no FEMA, no statements from the White House, nothing. And this is what some of them have had to say.
It is so much worse than what the media is telling any of us.
I have a bad feeling that the spill in Ohio is way worse than we thought it was. Because if they're willing to talk about aliens instead of the spill, I do not think that's a good sign.
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, and there's barely been any talk about it in Ohio. In the newspapers and things like the Cincinnati Enquirer, it's been really quiet.
So I do think we just need to touch on what could have possibly caused all of this. In an article from Politico, and this was dated May 16th, 2022, it does talk about the labor shortage in the railway. It says, over the last 6 years, Class 1 freight railroads, which include BNSF Railway, CSX Transportation, Kansas City Southern Railway, Norfolk Southern, and Union Pacific, have hemorrhaged a combined 45,000 workers, according to the Surface Transportation Board. That's nearly 29% of their workforce. There have been a decent amount of focus on the problems in the trucking industry, but there hasn't been as much attention on the rail side, and frankly, all of them need to be in order for our supply chain to be functioning properly. AFL-CIO's Transportation Trades Department President Greg Reagan told Weekly Shift, every single component has to be working well, whether it be the ports, the railroads, the trucking industry, or the warehousing industry. You can't reduce workforce and reduce equipment by the levels they have and expect to be able to maintain the level of service and meet the demand of our economy, he added. So this is really just chickens coming home to roost. And the media hammered Ron DeSantis for weeks about Hurricane Ian, a natural disaster that impacted thousands, and pushed the message that the whole thing could have been prevented if people in Florida had just voted for someone who believed in climate change. Yet they have nothing to say about the labor shortage that is causing lower maintenance and inspection capacity on our railway cars, having to extend these loads to twice the recommended number of cars per train, with only 1 or 2 conductors to manage them while they're traveling, things that actually can be managed and can be prevented, and they have, again, nothing to say about it. Why has the White House not responded? Pete Buttigieg is the transportation secretary, and during a press conference he held like 2 days ago, he didn't mention it, not once. Just a few weeks ago, these people were hyperventilating about gas stoves, but we have one of the largest chemical spills in U.S. history. It's barely a blip on anybody's radar. And where are the press conferences? Where are the statements from the president? Scrolled through the White House Twitter page, and there was not one mention of it, but we know the president is probably busy with more important things. These are the same people that want to muzzle cow farts because of the methane that's released into the atmosphere, but they don't have anything to say about millions of pounds of burning vinyl chloride and the lasting impacts that this likely will have on who knows how many people for years to come. A couple of little side notes I just wanted to throw in here. One, there is a story circulating about a reporter that was arrested for covering this story. I have looked into this. Body cam footage was released from the incident that led to him being removed from the press conference, and this is what it looked like.
I am allowed to be here. Do you want to go to jail for criminal trespassing? Do you understand how quickly our lawyers will get me out? I don't care.
Sir, can we talk outside, please?
I am trying to
talk
listen.
outside, please.
And he escalated with me. I am doing my job. This is covered by the First Amendment.
I'm the building supervisor here. Please leave.
There you have it.
Let's go. Let's go.
You're under arrest. I'm under arrest. Sir.
He's a national correspondent. You cannot do this.
I'm a reporter with News Nation. It's all being recorded right now.
I hope it is.
Except your horrible.
From what I understand, the press conference was scheduled to start at 3. It was delayed until 5, and this particular reporter was scheduled to do a live spot at that time, so he decided to start live reporting at the press conference. The security guards felt that he was speaking too loud and being distracting, so they got into an altercation with him and then asked him to leave, and he refused. So that was kind of what led to that, and the mayor of that, that was conducting the conference has come out and said he did not order the arrest of this journalist and that he supported him being there there. And it also doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say that he was arrested for reporting when there were hundreds of reporters in the room doing the same thing. So I just kind of wanted to nip that in the bud. That is the information I have heard. So I don't know what the entire story is, but to me, it does not sound like what is being said and what is being repeated about him being arrested just for reporting this story lines up. There have also been reports of other train derailments in North or South Carolina and in Texas. I haven't heard much about the one in South Carolina. I've been looking for information, but the one in Houston, Texas, what appears to have happened is an 18-wheeler tried to cross the tracks and didn't make it, and the train crashed into that truck. Apparently there were no lights and no rails that come down at that particular crossing. So that is what I'm hearing. So it doesn't seem to be the same issue, but it does seem to be a little bit suspicious as to why suddenly all of these things are happening at once. Let me know your thoughts on this whole situation. Also post any additional updates that you have heard. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Please hit the notification bell so you be notified every time I post a video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.